Chairman Medina, Chairman McCarty, and members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Dennis Larson. I'm the Executive Director of Compensation Programs and Strategy for the University of California. I have responsibility for administering the policy and program pertaining to the university's outside professional activities for the Senior Management Group, or SMG, as they're known, which are the university's top administrators, including chancellors. I will provide you with an overview of the current policy on outside professional activities, or OPA, describing the policy provisions. I also wanted to note that the President and Board of Regents have acknowledged the Chancellor's apology and acceptance of responsibility in this matter and have stated that this should not overshadow Chancellor Katehi's overall performance leading the University of California at Davis. Under her leadership, the campus has made significant advances in expanding enrollment of California students, improving student and faculty diversity, growing philanthropy, and enhancing the campus's medical and research enterprises, among many other accomplishments. The Board of Regents has confidence in Chancellor Katehi and her continued stewardship of Davis. A policy has existed on outside professional activities in some form since 1995. Recommendations from the Regent's 2006 Task Force on UC Compensation, Accountability, and Transparency resulted in a revised policy in 2007 that limited the number of externally compensated for-profit governance board activities to 3. Clarified that the policy would apply to SMG members who also had underlying faculty appointments. The Regents updated this policy in 2010, which is the current policy we have today, and they recognized the value of allowing this type of service. The Board also recognized that this was a common practice among other institutions of higher education, the vast majority of which allow external service, including compensated board service. The scope of the policy applies only to members of the Senior Management Group, approximately 200 individuals. There are 3 important principles that the outside professional activities policy governs: conflict of interest, conflicts of commitment, and apparent conflicts of interest and or commitment. Your briefing notes provide you with some details on these key criteria. With conflict of interest, SMG members may not participate or influence a university decision in which they have a financial interest, as defined by the Political Reform Act. The responsibility for determining and disclosing an actual or apparent conflict rests first with the SMG member and then with his/her approving authority. A conflict of commitment is a subjective judgment by SMG member or approving authority regarding the time required to reasonably fulfill the outside professional activity, and or where participation in that activity otherwise is incompatible with their responsibilities to the university. The third principle is apparent conflict of interest and or commitment. The policy notes that instances may occur where there is an appearance of conflict of interest, even though the SMG member does not have a financial interest in the activity. SMG members are expected to exercise integrity and good judgment and must avoid the appearance of favoritism in all of the dealings on behalf of the university. With regard to outside service, the policy makes a distinction between compensated and uncompensated activities. For compensated activities, SMGs are limited to serving on 3 for-profit boards where the member has governance responsibilities, and any exceptions must be approved by the Regents. Governance is defined as serving in a decision-making role on a for-profit board and does not include serving in an advisory capacity. Personal time must be used for compensated service, either off-hour time and or vacation time. For uncompensated activities, there are no specific limits on number of activities an SMG may participate in. However, they are still subject to the conflict of commitment rules. You have in your briefing notes an overview of the university's review and approval process as well as reporting requirements. I won't go into detail on this section, but would like to state that the SMG member must complete a pre-approval process request form and provide details of the proposed service to his or her approving authority. For the President's direct reports, including chancellors, the SMG member's request is reviewed by the General Counsel's Office to identify potential structural conflicts of interest or commitment, relying on the information that's provided by the member. If the request is approved, a letter is issued to the SMG member reminding them of the requirements under state law and that the member must recuse himself or herself from making or influencing decisions in which they have a material financial interest. Only after receiving approval can the SMG member announce or participate in the proposed activity. In 2010, the Association of Governing Boards conducted a survey of presidents and chancellors regarding their service on for-profit corporate boards. The results of this survey showed that the vast majority of respondents allowed corporate board activity and to retain earnings. Recently, we performed an informal survey of the Association of American University Institutions, which also showed that none of the responding institutions reported prohibitions on participation in outside activities, and none prohibited receiving income from these activities. In summary, this policy is intended to support and recognize the value of SMG members' outside professional activities to the university, such as contributing to their academic field, sharing their expertise with other institutions, and providing service to the community. While these activities are often beneficial to the university and to the members themselves, the primary commitment of an SMG member must be to fulfill their regular university responsibilities. The policy aims to assess the risks such as conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, and apparent conflicts of interest and or commitment associated with outside professional activities, and to establish review and approval procedures that address these concerns. Additionally, the policy provides guidance about the limits of such activities in relationship to fulfilling university responsibilities. Based on recent events, the University of California Board of Regents has decided to fully review the current policy governing outside professional activities for senior managers, including chancellors. Thank you for allowing me to present information on this issue to your committees. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. And at this time, I just want to welcome Chancellor Katehi.
Thank you. Chair McCarthy, Chair Medina, and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about my experience and perspectives about university leaders serving on outside boards. Before I start, I wanted to again acknowledge my lapse in judgment and apologize for accepting a position on the DeVry University Board of Directors. I resigned before I had the opportunity to act as a board member, and I received no compensation. I also want to state unequivocally that this will not happen again. Addressing your concerns, I have already put into place additional reviews of future board invitations over and above existing campus and university policies so that this issue will not happen again. Since I became Chancellor, my primary commitment has always been to UC Davis and to the University of California. And I believe that my commitment is demonstrated by many tangible accomplishments achieved during my tenure at UC Davis, including enrolling more undergraduate California residents than any other UC campus since 2010. UC Davis is ranked third in the world for sustainability. UC Davis is ranked second in the nation for advancing social and economic mobility for low-income students. It is ranked first in the nation for women in STEM. It is ranked first in the world for our veterinary medicine program, and ranked first and second in the world for our College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. We opened the first AB 540 Center to provide information support for undocumented students and their families, and we opened the first Center for African Diaspora and Black students on our campus to provide support for them and to improve their time to degree. We have been generating $8 billion in economic impact and 72,000 jobs to the California economy annually. And we were showing that for the first time we could raise more than $1 billion for the institution in support of our scholarships, our faculty, and our academic programs. I regret that this issue has distracted from these important accomplishments and achievements of our campus, and from the ongoing challenges that you, our state legislators, and our university are working together to resolve. Participating on the boards of organizations outside of campus is encouraged and considered to be a responsibility of academic leadership at UC and across the country. I believe this service enhances my role as a UC Davis Chancellor and also my ability to benefit the university community. Throughout my career as an academic leader, including as Chancellor at UC Davis, I have chosen to participate in a variety of external activities with all but one without compensation, and with the goals in mind of advancing the interest of UC Davis students and faculty, and fulfilling what I see as a responsibility of academic leaders to make a difference to California, to the nation, and the world. As a woman and STEM leader, I feel a particular obligation to address the chronic lack of gender diversity on boards. I feel this experience serves to increase interest in STEM disciplines among young women. Moreover, as a leader at UC Davis, where we always are trying to be innovative, I believe that I can bring our accomplishments and best practices to corporate decision-making tables to help make those organizations better. However, and in addition, I say that we also bring a lot of new knowledge to our campuses as well. For example, when I participated on the board of John Wiley & Sons to help improve the quality of our educational materials and make them more affordable, and also my primary concern and interest was to advocate for the acceleration of open access to academic materials. Also, I learned a lot about online course materials and curriculum development to help the campus examine benefits to online education and online professional programs. And in the process of serving on boards, I'm able to fulfill one of my fundamental responsibilities to build awareness of UC Davis and the accomplishments of our students, faculty, and staff among opinion leaders and decision makers who would not otherwise know about us. These relationships can lead to jobs for our students, financial support and advocacy for our student and faculty initiatives and aspirations, and partnerships that deliver world-changing innovations to those who need them the most. My number one commitment has always been and will continue to be to the students, faculty, and staff of UC Davis, and to ensure UC Davis remains among the top research universities in the world, for now and in the future. I hope this gives you some insight into my thinking and intentions, and I look forward to your questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, First of all, I'd like to thank Chairman Medina and Chairman McCarty for inviting me to sit on this meeting. Obviously, this is an important issue to me, as an advocate for higher education and making sure that we focus on our students, our tuition, and the problems at hand with higher education. I'd just like to ask, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the CSU system, who apparently, with 3 out of 23, doesn't have the issues, but it seems like you've taken these issues to heart, and I appreciate what you brought to the table. Mr. Larson, with all due respect, I know you were just reading policy. However, it just seems like we're not hearing quite the same message. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask a couple questions. One, while Chancellor Katehi seems to be the poster child here because of situations that were brought to light, I'm interested in what's going on in the entire UC system. And are you prepared to, give us a report in terms of, what chancellors, what presidents, and what members of the UC system are, have outside employment? Because I think it's important that we face this issue, as a system first, and not just, rush to judgment in one university, that's happened there. That's something that the Board of Regents and the UC Janet Napolitano, can certainly deal with. But I'm interested in knowing what the extent of this issue is. And I appreciate the fact that your regents are interested in dealing with it, but I'd like to understand how widespread it is within the UC system as we got the information from the CSU system.
We're collecting the information on 2015 right now, so that's not quite available. All of this information is posted publicly on our website and is available for anyone to see. In 2014, there were 3 paid board activities among the 10 chancellors. All 10 chancellors had unpaid activities, generally associated with the community in which they work and that type of service. But it was just the 3 chancellors that had paid board activities among the 10.
Your presidents?
President Napolitano doesn't have any paid activity.
Gotcha. I guess what I should say, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Anybody else within the university management group?
There are about 200 SMG members, which is the group that's eligible or covered under this policy. And I can't tell you exactly how many. Well, actually, I might be able to. Bear with me here a second. In 2014, the last full year, out of the 249 SMG members reported a total of 114 compensated activities. This is posted on our website. You can see the detail of each individual, which boards they served on, how much compensation they received, both in cash and non-cash, such as stock and deferred compensation.
Mr. Larson, you said 14?
49 SMG members
49.
for 114 compensated activities.
49.
Total.
And does your report go beyond senior management?
Not this one. Faculty have a similar policy. I'm not sure if that's posted, but this report focuses on those 200 individuals that are classified as SMG.
As senior management. Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Levine?
Yeah, I think for both of them, or both of the institutions, and this was raised during the CSU presentation, which was very good, by the way. You talked about how only 2 university presidents were engaged in this type of activity. And I wanted to ask for both of you, have any such requests been denied?
Not that I'm aware of. We spoke briefly with Chancellor White about that, and he hasn't had one presented to him that he denied. Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of 1, maybe 2, a while ago that was denied from a chancellor, I believe. The approval process that we have, the chancellors are responsible for approving the SMG members who report to them, and so I wouldn't be aware of those.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Weber.
Yes, I want to first of all thank you all for your comments and for your reporting that's here. I think as a committee, it's difficult to compare CSU to UC. First of all, I just want to say that having spent 40 years at the CSU campus and having attended UC, they're totally different campuses. I mean, the reality in terms of the selection of presidents, the mission of those presidents, what we expect of those presidents is sometimes very different. We expect a UC president to be a fundraiser. I mean, that's reality now. And some CSUs, San Diego State is one, and a couple of others that rise to the level of fundraising are in those categories. So they're kind of different missions, and so therefore the attraction for corporations to invite them to serve on their boards is a little bit different. And so you run into difficulty if you expect the same kind of activity at UC and CSU in terms of invitation to serve on boards and the opportunities to do that. So I want to make sure that we, as we look at the 2 institutions, that we recognize the difference in the individuals that are chosen to be leaders at those 2 institutions, as well as the admissions of those 2, the kind of mission that they have and our expectations of the people who will lead those institutions. So I want to make sure that we're kind of aware of that as we look at this and begin to see what happens at the CSU and the UC campuses are totally different ones. I'm not sure, this whole process is informative and helpful. I'm not sure where we're going with it because, when you start digging into this, it gets very deep. And we probably haven't had the kind of abuses that can have existed in other places sometimes, maybe because we do have some level of oversight at the local campuses. But I'm not sure what our overall mission is in doing this. Are we planning at some point to get down to the level of faculty, because you may find that that's much broader in terms of faculty who earn money from serving on boards and commissions because they are the chair of a science department, a chair of this, a chair of that, got grants and other kinds of things that come as a result. I'm not sure where this is just kind of, unless we see some real clear areas of where there's been some abuse and maybe one or 2 that we see lack of judgment in terms of decisions to be on a certain board that conflicts with the mission of the university. Are we planning to look at this in terms of policy? And this is to the 2 chairs. Are we planning to look at this in terms of policy and how far we go? I know at the CSU at one point, there was an effort to control how much outside work that's done. And some of that, it becomes real complicated, that you can't work more than this versus that. You're not supposed to earn so much in terms of consultant work versus some others. But then that became too complicated to quantify because of the fact that the salaries are a certain amount and consultant work can be much greater. I'm not really sure. If we're planning to redo some policy or how deep we're going to go in terms, are we going to stay at the level of the executives, or are we really going to look at the issue of conflict of time? And I know interest, but particularly conflict of time, dealing with the whole range of opportunities at a CSU and a UC campus.
So I served as a community college trustee. Mm-hmm. So we had the issue of a professor having other business outside besides teaching. And it became an issue. But I don't think that our purpose here today is to do that or to go that deep or that far. I think our purpose here today was to look at senior management and what is the policy of the CSU and UC serving on boards, both for-profit and nonprofit boards. So I don't think we're going that deep.
Do we believe we lack adequate oversight? I know the CSU's got lots of stuff they do. Do we think we lack adequate oversight in terms of it looks like folks have to get permission to do things? If we've got 3 presidents and we only have, 10, we only have 3 that's doing something. Is that adequate oversight with regards to? Do we think that's adequate oversight? I should ask, or are we lacking policy and procedure?
Well, as we've heard, UC itself is going to be looking at the policy, and I think so. Our being here today is, what do we add? What do we want to see?
Okay.
What difference? What more do we want to see? I think they've shared that it's posted on the website. Maybe it needs to be posted someplace where the public can see it better, easier, so that it's more widely known. And I think that's the purpose of our discussion here.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I know we asked the others who were here whether or not there was any what was happening nationally, and so whether or not these policies are nationally known. And so I think as we look at it, one of the things I think as a committee, and hopefully you would be able to look into is whether or not if you increase the policies and in a way, does that make it more difficult to attract presidents to the University of California? Unless there's a nationwide kind of effort to do that. I know we've run into this ongoing dialogue before about compensation and opportunities and those kinds of things, and what happens in terms of the attraction of presidents and things like that. I don't know if you've seen anything like that where people are talking about it at your level, that some uniformity with regards to, so that there's a level playing field in the whole issue of recruitment.
Yes, it has come up in the past. The American Governing Board survey that was alluded to by the professors earlier, their survey covered about 300 higher education institutions, and less than 3% of those prohibit activity. So it's a very competitive, common practice, prevalent practice among institutions of higher education to allow for board activity and for them to retain those earnings. So I think if we were to deviate from that, it could create some pressure. The pressure may be in ways that increase our costs. It could be that we may not get the candidates. It's really difficult, as the professors indicated, it's really difficult to determine some of these things.
I know at one point in San Diego, that was when we had a different chancellor, the public became very upset over the fact that I guess he made his 3 times more in serving on boards than profit and nonprofit boards than he did in his salary. So that kind of freaked people out a little bit.
Sure.
Because the average person doesn't have that opportunity. So when the public reads it, they kind of freak out about it. But we discovered that probably it wasn't uncommon for a science institution like UCSD if you compared them to some of the others, the Stanfords and the Harvards, and which they ranked among in terms of the science and medical school and stuff, that it wasn't too far out of kilter, But it was interesting that the public obviously had great concerns, but they were somewhat unfamiliar with obviously the competitiveness that exists among these presidents.
Well, and it was that particular situation in 2007, I believe, that led the regions to review the policy and place a limitation of no more than 3 for-profit paid corporate board memberships.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lowe and then Mr. Chavez.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate everyone coming here today, and Chancellor Katehi for coming and speaking to us here today. I think Chairman McCarty and Chairman Medina made it abundantly clear in their opening comments when we began this committee hearing on the intent of and the purpose of the committee, and I appreciate the dialogue also from others to get a wider perspective, as this is a broad issue. Specifically, I am personally a graduate of CSU, San Jose State, and perhaps sitting on here from my colleagues closer to that of age of being in the classroom. And so I think part of the frustration as a relatively younger person to being in the classroom is that of the sentimentality of the student body. As we identify the purpose of the role of the state legislature as elected officials, we are accountable to the people that we represent. And in particular, when we think about the institutions of our universities, about serving not only faculty members, but also that of the students, I think there's a great disconnect, particularly in the public discourse of what we see going on here today, and the frustration on tuition and this frustration on a wide variety of issues as it relates to housing and many other issues. But when you are a student, your whole life is in the classroom, and so therefore the frustration on life challenges can be directed oftentimes in their life experience of that of being as a student, as a full-time and a part-time student. And so when we identify this issue and when we hear the dialogue about what we know is in practice and what we know is regulations, what is allowable by the universities and by the systems, there's a clear distinction between that of perhaps what is allowed and that of what is ethical, which is that of the character of an individual and that of the reputation. And so specifically to Chancellor Katehi, we appreciate the you being here, because I know it's not easy, but at the same time recognizing the importance of your role as a public servant and being accountable. And so having said that, when you hear the dialogue previously from the panel earlier and talking about some of the best practices in that of situations of your counterparts and colleagues about perhaps individuals at the CSU, we heard from a number of presidents who have contributed their profits towards the universities themselves. You have taken accountability specifically for the situation that you're in, because you have yourself said that it was a misstep and oversight. Having said that, what do you think the role of the legislature should be in identifying this particular issue, recognizing that there was a personal lapse in judgment, specifically at UC Davis in the capacity that you were in, but perhaps as a wider system?
So, first of all, thank you for your comment and your thoughtful remarks. Personally, I believe that when leaders of institutions serve on boards, outside activities, and if it's done thoughtfully and well, then there is a positive outcome that comes from these positions. A lot of times we are asked as institutional leaders to run these very large organizations and to make decisions and to try to learn about new models and of learning, of educating our students, educating others who are at the professional level. And experience outside of the university can add a lot to our ability to make important decisions. So that is one element. So personally, I believe that when it's done well, participation in outside activities can be a positive thing to the university, not just the individual chancellor. You brought forward the issue of compensation from outside boards and how some individual chancellors have decided to turn the money back. I just wanted to tell you in this regard that even if not done very publicly, personally, I always believed in the importance of access to higher education. I truly benefited myself as a student from scholarships that I received. My husband and I, since we were very young, have created a number of scholarships, very specifically 5 full scholarships endowed at UCLA, UC Davis, and the University of Illinois. We have this as part of who we are and what we do. And the fact that I dedicated the returns of the stocks that I received at the end last year from Wiley to student scholarships, it's not an individual act that was done in response to the questions, but it was something that he and I had decided to do. And giving into scholarships into institutions is something that we will continue doing. Whether it should be part of a policy to do this, that is an important question. And I would suggest that as we look into policies across the board, that is an important question to be addressed. In terms of commitment, because that is another issue. And I also would like to acknowledge what you brought forward, which is a lot of times the disconnect between the students' frustrations, a lot of issues they feel in the classroom, and the understanding of the role of a chancellor or of another leader in the university. It's not very well understood of what a chancellor like me or a president is asked to do. And for my campus, for example, I have not only been asked to make sure that the university runs well, financially strong, but that our students receive access to an education that now has become very expensive because it has not been funded as in the past. Access to this education, 55% of our students do not pay tuition at UC Davis. And for that to happen implies a lot of fundraising. It implies a lot of outside activities. You cannot raise $1.1 billion over 6 years, or another 2 or so will go next time, and mostly to support students and faculty, without a chancellor like me being totally invested in outside activities in the community and starting. If you see my outside activities, there are in the community, both Davis and Sacramento, in the region, in California, and in the U.S. So the roles are very complex. I agree with you, very difficult to understand. I can understand and sympathize, and I really feel the frustration of the students concerning where we are today in terms of loans, in terms of expenditures, and so forth. And I really hope that as we look at the policies, we ask those important questions.
Mr. Chavez.